where not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts, unabridged, the history, what body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
From WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network, Friday Java, our magazine program that we present weekly here, and we've been doing this now about 10 years, I think, or so, and we changed a lot of programs here at WBRN. Nonetheless, we're on the second day of August 2019. We'll have some the latest update from the people at the University of Virginia, that's in Charlottesville, and as we normally do, we pay our respects to Heather Heyer, who was killed by a white supremacist in Charlottesville. She died so that millions of other people will someday live in peace, and that scourge will be removed from the American nation. Had a very interesting week. We'll talk more about this on the week that was. We had two debates this week with the Democratic Party, fight for the core values of the Democratic Party. On the first night, we had Bernie Sanders and our own Elizabeth Warren from the Commonwealth. They were there, and various other people were there also. Delaney has been from Maryland, and Hickenlooper, a brewmaster, an owner of a brewery out of Denver, used to be the governor of Colorado. And then we had a right-winger from Ohio named Tim Ryan. There were several of those characters around, and that was the first night of the debate. They fought hard against Medicare for All without knowing actually what it was. And at the same time, against the Green New Deal and various other things. The message there was the same talking points that you'll hear from the DJ Trump gang, that America is not ready for socialism, that Medicare for All would destroy the healthcare system. They said the same thing. There was an interview with Debbie Dingle. She is the widow of John Dingell. And the history of the Dingell family. John Dingell's father in the 40s introduced national health care, and that was under the administration of Harry S. Truman. And Roosevelt. He was a Roosevelt Democrat. That was John Dingell's father, and John Dingell also introduced it for the 20 years before the Affordable Care Act was passed. And as Jared Pippin used to say, with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, once people got past the noise and started to utilize it, they would like it. And there's no doubt about it, it went up in the polls. There was a situation there when the Affordable Care Act's website was portal, or you want to call it, was put online. But the problem was they hired contractors that didn't really know what they were doing, and some of the states did also. And they were swamped. National portal went down, and later it was repaired, and in several states there were problems the initial year. The next year there was not. And those that said that it would destroy the healthcare system were made to be liars, quite literally. The healthcare system has added more jobs. The healthcare has added more jobs than ever, and never looked back. The same thing they said about Medicare when it came out. They called it socialistic. They even had old Ronald Reagan out making commercials. That was before he was president, about the ill effects of Medicare. Said the same thing about Social Security also. So it's nothing new there that these people put the scare tactics out, but if they could pull this off in 2019, 2020, is a miracle. But this is the first time, basically, that you had last year, the last presidential round, 2016, Bernie Sanders was there, and everybody knew he was a socialist. People didn't really make very much of it. But this time around, DJ Trump holding on literally by his proverbial fingernails on a board that is slick as grease, period. So in other words, that is why you see these types of things where he singled out Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, Representative Tbilisi of Detroit, and also our own Representative Presley of Boston, that they should go back to where they came from. And then his scandalous attacks upon Representative Elijah Cummings of Baltimore, and even old Uncle what's his name was there in Baltimore. Ben Carlson doesn't call upon Uncle Ben very much these days, but Uncle Ben, of course, lived for 30 years in Baltimore. He was a surgeon, a very famous one, at Johns Hopkins. The conjoined twins, that was his handiwork there when he was a surgeon there. So he's done other things other than being a step and fetch it for DJ Trump. But he was there in Baltimore, and you can tell when these characters get into trouble. They bring out the House type, and came Ben Carlson. He appeared there. He also utilized some of these mega type pastors that are in hock to the financial community. He had even had Dr. King's niece there and some others. But how much currency do those people have? Very, very little currency do they have to transact. In fact, we have here Representative Hurd, the only African American in the Congress from Texas, is not running for re-election. As we'll talk about that. And the people from the Crystal Ball, of course, they have their take on some races there, and we'll talk about those races. We'll look at a little bit of polling. We don't have very much polling to look at. But let's firstly go to Representative Hurd. If we can get our pointer straight here. This is incidentally from the Washington Post. The Representative Hurd, lone African American Republican, will not reappear. This is by Robert Morris. Anyway, William Hurd, the lone African American Republican in the House, and the red GOP lawmaker to criticize DJ Trump will not seek re-election, he told the Post. His retirement is the third by a Texas Republican in the past week, and ninth by a party incumbent, dealing a blow to GOP efforts to control the House next election. Hurd's retirement. Tim Scott, he's from South Carolina. He would be the lone African-American Republican in the Congress. Hurd barely held a seat last year, and Trump lost the congressional district, which covered more than 58,000 square miles between San Antonio and El Paso along the Mexican border, by 4 percentage points in 2016. Interview with the Post, Hurd criticized Trump's racist tweets last month, in which the president said the four women of color should go back and help fix the total broken and crime-infested places from which they came. Three of the women, of course, from the U.S., and the fourth is, Ilhan Omar was a Somali refugee and became a citizen in the U.S. as a teenager. When you imply that because someone doesn't look like you in telling them to go back to Africa or whatever, you are implying that they are not an American, and you're implying that they have less worth than you. That's what Representative Hurd said. But Hurd also repeated his earlier pledge to vote for Trump if he's the Republican nominee in 2020. He said Latinos, African Americans, other groups would be receptive to conservative themes if they weren't drowned in racially charged rhetoric, but they have to be by necessity. More recently, targeted, of course, Elijah Cummings. No human being would want to live in a rat-infested, rodent-infested city. Remarks prompted widespread criticism. Number one, show up to the community that hasn't seen a Republican show up and listen. Of course, old Uncle Ben did show up there. Hurd's announcement came as Trump escalated his attack on Baltimore and other diverse and liberal cities, as he told a crowd in Cincinnati that Democrats deliver poverty for their constituents and privilege for themselves. Hurd 41 said he plans to run again for elective office, but didn't specify where. He's made scheduled trips in recent months to New Hampshire, Iowa, South Carolina, with an eye towards the 2024 calendar. I think I could help the country in different ways. Incidentally, I'm interested in pursuing my lifelong passion at that intersect of technology and national security. He's a former CIA official. Hurd represents a district that includes 820 miles of the U.S. medical border, calling it the third world solution to a 21st century problem. Has been frequent critic of the wall. He instead favors increased use of technology, additional staffing in the Border Patrol. He opposed the national emergency that diverted funds from the military. Hurd called upon Trump to abandon his presidential bid in October of 2016 after the Post reported the audio tape. The infamous one. Now, he joined fellow Republicans on a committee in 2017 saying there's no evidence of conspiracy between Russia and the Trump campaign. In March, he and other Republicans called Adam Schiff to step down as chairman. Well, he's not in that anymore. He was first elected in 2014, defeating incumbent Pete Galileo by 2,400 votes. He beat Galileo by 3,000 in the rematch in 2016, then defeated Jenny Ortez Jones by fewer than 1,000 votes last year. He says he believes he would have won in 2020 if he decided to run. Ortez Jones has announced she is seeking the seat, and of course other people will come into the race. From Tom Emmer, he's chair of the National Republican Congressional Committee, thanked her for his service and called him a patriot. What else could he say? Fellow representative there, Pete Olson and K. Michael Conaway, also announced in recent days these are Texas types. They would retire Olson from his Houston seat's expected to be a top Democratic target, but Conway's Midland seat is probably safe. Republicans picked up 2 additional Texas House seats in the Democrats, in the midterm in 2018. The number of Texas Latinos has grown by 1.9 million since the 2000 census, accounting for more than half of the state's population growth. In Hurd's district, 70% of the residents are Latinos. Republicans have won every state race in Texas since 1998, but Hurd said Texas, with its 38 electoral votes, should be viewed as a purple state. He said Democrats have a chance to carry Texas in a 2020. Democratic candidate last one in Texas was Jimmy Carter. And when you look at trends, the 2 largest growing groups are Latinos and young people in the state of Texas. Now, let's continue with the post here. Sometimes we see something that is worth nearly half, and this the House Democrats back impeachment inquiries of DJ Trump, amplified by calls for the president from presidential candidates. This is by Mike DeBoss and Felicia Summez. Beginning early this year is a long shot movement by some Democrats to impeach old DJ Trump. Growing sentiment in Congress has been amplified by calls for impeachment. One of those candidates, former House and Urban Development Secretary Julian Castro, suggested Wednesday debate that Trump will trump Democrats throughout 2020 if they fail to act on impeachment. Now, the push in the House to oust Trump has been accelerated by testimony from Robert Mueller III. Nancy Pelosi comes to stress investigation, interviews 8 lawmakers who publicly backed impeachment inquiries over the past week show they're eager to speak out against DJ Trump. Some, in fact, delivered praise for Pelosi, while breaking with the more deliberate approach. And Lisa Blunt Dorchester, she's from Delaware, who said in her statement last week that Congress must stand up and demand credibility. Now, an ABC Washington Post poll released last month, 58% of Americans believe the House should not begin impeachment proceedings against DJ, while 37% should. Of the 117 of 235 Democrats supported inquiry. Now, they'll be on recess till the 9th of September. Amongst those backing impeachment inquiries, 2 prominent House committee chairs, Representative Engel, a center-left person, an educator running against Engel with the backing of Justice Democrats, said in an interview he was ecstatic when he heard that Engel, a 30-year veteran, backed an impeachment inquiry. He's forced to back one, but that's just an inquiry. A coalition of liberal activist groups, including Invisible, a grassroots organization that helped oust Republicans in dozens of House districts and need to impeach a group funded by Tom Sayer, launched the Impeach August campaign. That is good that they did. They need the financing out there. Even before House members left Washington, Severs said Move On members made 7,600 calls to congressional districts, 1,000 thank you cards. So they're using some old school basic things. Several Democratic freshman type, first year types, who unseated Republicans were amongst those who came out in favor of the inquiry in recent weeks. Jason Crow, he's from Colorado, who flipped Denver district. My district is not one that generally supports Donald Trump. We're a district he lost by 10 points. And another surprise announcement came from Representative Emmanuel Cleaver. He's from St. Louis, who for months had publicly urged caution. So things are changing here. And Denny Heck and Suzanne Debini, I suppose is how you pronounce her name, Delbene, came out there, and Heck is a member of the House Intelligence Committee, said he had marinated in a 448-page report. He wrote his statement backing impeachment on his lakefront cabin on Saturday. According to Delbene, the Mueller testimony was a clarifying moment for her and two others who have taken another approach, but avoiding confrontation with the party leaders, simply declared the impeachment process is already underway. As Representative Dorsch from Florida, Judiciary Committee a member, and John Garamenti of California. So things are moving along there. What few months mean there? Senator Julia Brownley of California, who made her announcement hours before Mueller's testimony. It is critically important that we have every tool in our toolbox to make things happen. I'm absolutely convinced that it doesn't give up a leg legally in terms of trying to get witnesses we need to come. There are dozens of prominent Democrats who are urging caution, including moderate House members. On the stage, Senator Bennett of Colorado argued that an impeachment surely would result in acquittal in the Senate. Well, everybody knows that's been to a goat roping contest. There, what happened with Bill Clinton is used as a playbook there. Severus said the groundswell from rank-and-file Democrats could be hard for Pelosi and other leaders to ignore. This is becoming a mainstream thing. Now, if it becomes a mainstream thing, as Professor August Nips said in his piece about Puerto Rico, you got some problems there for old DJ Trump. Period. This is from the Post also. DJ Trump's pick to lead. The U.S. intelligence claimed he arrested 300 illegal immigrants in a single day. He didn't, and this is by Sean, Boberg, Robert Howell Jr. The nation's intelligence community cited a massive roundup of immigrants. This is Representative John Radcliffe. He's a character from Texas, described as one of the largest there. As U.S. Attorney, I arrested over 300 illegals in one day, he said on his congressional website. But a close look at the case shows Radcliffe claimed conflicts with the court records and recollections of others who participated in the operation. Radcliffe played a supporting role in the sweep, which involved the U.S. Attorney's offices in 5 states led by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, that's ICE. Targeted workers, this is a poetry, Pilgrim's Pride, were suspected of stolen Social Security numbers. Only 45 workers were charged by prosecutors in Radcliffe's office. It shows 6 of those cases were dismissed, 2 of them because the suspects turned out to be American citizens. One of those, a 19-year-old woman, was awakened in a house all the way there, and she said by immigration officials. I.J. Urban, a former immigration investigator who was involved in the early planning before retiring, said in an interview that the operation was a costly failure. Later, as a private immigration consultant, he advised the poetry process after the sweep and gathered information about the woman who was arrested. A spokesman for Radcliffe, Rachel Stevens, did not respond. I imagine not. This is Radcliffe came on the scrutiny, another one coming on the scrutiny. He's the one supposed to replace Dan Coates. Dan Coates used to be a senator from Indiana. Radcliffe dialed back to his earlier claims that he won convictions in high-profile terrorist cases as a federal prosecutor. In other words, the guy is just a pathological liar. Some current and former intelligence officers have said Radcliffe, the least qualified person ever there. For the Post, as a staunch defender of DJ Trump. He came from Notre Dame's in 1986, Southern Methodist University Law School in Dallas in 1989. a native of Illinois, found to a small city of Heath. That's an affluent suburb east of Dallas. He was hired in 2004 as an assistant federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of Texas. His background is in law enforcement. I don't have any real specialty training, he said in an interview with the Dallas Morning News. The same year he became a prosecutor, he was elected mayor of Heath, an unpaid position. And he cited his leadership of Heath, a wealthy lakeside community of 8,000 people. And let me finish this up. It's enough of on this liar here. Anyway, Urban said he raised questions about his goals and methods during a planning session in 2019. Urban retired from ICE before the sweep. He later worked as a consultant to Pilgrim's Pride Company with immigration law. He dismissed Radcliffe's claim of having arrested 300 people there. A news release by ICE and Department of Justice on the day of the arrest called the operation an ICE-led investigation with support from 5 attorneys. The release said the defendants could receive up to 5 years in prison and $250,000 fines. That's there. The raid was marked by some missteps and did not result in long sentences and big fines. One suspect, Delgado, 19-year-old female, was detained. Born in California, she worked at Pilgrim's Pride for almost a year before arrest. The interview in Spanish, Delgado told the Post that 8 agents, some of them armed, awakened her and took her into custody just hours before she finished the night shift at the plant. She said she was surprised. I was asking people who they are. Who are these people? Delgado was released the following day after agents learned she was a U.S. citizen. The case is dropped after prosecutors representing Radcliffe's office asked the judge to dismiss the interest of justice. Another citizen, also 19, was arrested again at Pilgrim's Pride poultry plant. A third was a legal resident worker. And somebody named Acosta, a 30-year veteran agent and manager at the agency formerly known as the Immigration Nationalization Service, was at the plant advising the company during the sweep. In an interview, he said the top ICE official who was there bet the 19-year-old man was legal. He said the officer responded, he can tell it to the judge. Well, that figures there. And the result, guilty plea, single charge of falsely using a social security number, and a $100 fine. As a result of his efforts, Pilgrim Pride paid a $4.5 million criminal penalty. The agreement to pay the money was not struck until after December of 2009, a year after Radcliffe had left the office. So this is Mr. Radcliffe, more cracks in the DJ Trump gang. And this is something that's coming up there. Here's a contract. We talked about this in the open source report, another one in our lineup of programs. The Pentagon reexamines. This is a $5 billion cloud contract here. This is by Aaron Grigg. It was let's see, the White House newly installed Defense Secretary Mark Esper to re-examine the awarding of a massive contract. 11-hour Oval Office intervention came just out weeks before the bid. I'll get it right. It was as of Sunday. Department of Justice defended its plan to move ahead with a single company, what is known as the Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure. That's a $10 billion contract. The President's directive represents a departure from what is usually a scripted bureaucratic process. Well, these things are from our days, and doing that have all kinds of appeals. So giving the contract to more than one company would be welcomed by Oracle and IBM, whose business is threatened by Amazon. They unsuccessfully sued to block the award. The Pentagon said that only Amazon and Microsoft meet the requirements for this contract. Anyway, the contract goes on and on and on here. Let me just finish this up. Amazon Web Services, a cloud computing provider, is the only company that received the highest level of the Department of Defense IT certificate, known as Impact Level 6, which is allowed to handle top secret data. The advantage stems in part from a $6 million contract with the CIA was awarded in 2013. That should facilitate the sharing of information with the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. So that's part of what this scheme is all about. Also, the precedent for Trump's trying to tip the scales specifically against Amazon. Trump lobbied the Postmaster General, Mag Brennan, to double the rate of postage charges to Amazon. As Oracle alleged in a lawsuit that the Department of Defense bidding process has been plagued with conflict of interest that helped Amazon. Well. And Tom Davis, a former Virginia congressman who is now a partner focusing on a government contract law at Holland and Knight, said the president's intervention probably will become the subject of litigation. No doubt about that. So in other words, more litigation, not less litigation out there. And let me find our buddies from the university and that shop, Larry Sabato's shop. And we should have a little bit here. This is a note on the state of politics. Debate efforts can fade. Trump may be running behind his approval. The N19, that's in North Carolina, will there be a Magnolia runoff. This is by Kyle Klondike, the managing editor. The polling effects from the first debate largely wore up by the time of the second. In 2016, Trump won some voters who otherwise didn't like him, but there are some signs he isn't benefiting from such a dynamic at this moment. No doubt, the special election, House election, moves from a toss-up, that is, they're ready to lean Republican. Now, the Mississippi gubernatorial race may be headed to a runoff, according to Real Clear, and they use Real Clear, and so does our guest on Saturday, use it also, Uncle Carl Rowe. The day of the first debate, we're only listing candidates who are was the average of the Democratic presidential nominees battle on the 26th of June, the day of the first debate. We're only listing candidates who are 2% or higher in the averages, rounded to the nearest whole percentage point. Now, what they've done here, they've got Joe Lunchbox Biden at 32, Bernie at 17, Liz Warren at 13, Kamala Harris at 7, Buttigieg at 7, Beto O'Rourke at 3, and lucky to be there, and Senator Booker at 2% on Tuesday morning, the day of the start of the second debate. The average was 32 for Biden, 16 for Bernie, 14 for Liz Warren. She's up a point there. Kamala Harris at 11, and Buttigieg dropped to 6. Beto O'Rourke still at 3. And Andrew Yang at 2 and Booker at 2. Between then and now, Biden did drop for several points, hitting a low of 26 in the average. But some recovery was there. Also, we're waiting to see the Tuesday effect. Anyway, running behind his approval rating is a big part of the reason why DJ Trump won the presidency in 2006. Was he capped a non-significant percentage of voters who did not necessarily like him but chose him over Hillary Rodham Clinton. 38% of the electorate reported having a favorable opinion of him, according to the exit polls, but he won 46% of the vote, meaning he ran 8 points ahead of his favorables. Clinton, whose favorable was 43, got 48% of the vote, meaning she ran 5 points ahead of her favorite. In addition, Trump won 47 to 30 amongst the 18% of the electorate who held unfavorable views of him. However, in some early ballot tests, there is also indication that Trump is not only failing to pick up support from people who didn't like him, but in some instances, he doesn't appear to be winning every poll response who approve of his performance. Let's look at free, well-established live call in the national polls released over the last month, and Trump's ratings and tested against them. They look at the Fox News, ABC, Wall Street Journal, NBC Wall Street Journal, and ABC News, Washington Post. Now, this is a Fox News poll released last week, found that Trump's approval rating amongst registered voters at 46. I think that is what the poll will get to today says. But he only attracted between 39 and 42% of the voters in matchups against the top Democratic candidates, as Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. Biden does do better in the head-to-head with Trump at this point. The NBC Wall Street Journal poll released in July found Trump's approval at 45 amongst registered voters, but his support ballot test against four top Democrats at 42 to 44. But it's early. Trump was only 43% against Joe Biden, and against the three others between 46 and 48, effectively equaling his approval ratings. For comparison's sake, we go back and forth how Barack Obama was faring against Willard Romney in surveys in the same outlets at the same time in his presidency. This is mid-July 2011. Obama's approval rating for all adults was at 47, but he was at 51 against Willard Romney, who became his evident 212 opponent. Fox News pegged him at 45 amongst registered voters. He was 47 against Willard Romney. The NBC poll had him at 47, his approval rating amongst adults, and 48 against, 48 against Willard Romney. Now we look at some of these presidential approval on election day, 1972 to 2012. Tricky Dick Nixon, approval at the time of election, 61%, share of the vote 61%, no difference there. Jimmy Carter, 1980, he was at 38%, and he got 41% of the share of the national vote, 3% there. Reagan was at 58% in 84, and he got 59, just 1% there. President George H.W. Bush was at 33, and he got 37. They were charitable with him in 1992, and 4% difference there. While Bill Clinton in 1996, he was at 55, and his share was 49, a minus 6. And G.W. Bush in 2004, he was at 49, he got 51, did a little bit better there. And a 2% difference there. Barack Obama in 2012, 50 and 51, 1 there. So a little bit different there. And in the second round, Clinton beat Bob Dole 49 to 41, with Ross Perot winning 8%. So it would have been virtually tied up. Now we go on to North Carolina 9. This is Dan McCready, Marine veteran, running in a special election there in 9 against somebody named Dan Bishop. The polls show the candidates nodded at 46, McCready outperforming a generic ballot in the district, which shows a Republican lean of 48 to 39, almost 10 points there. In the last election cycle, McCready seemed to nearly lose the election to a renegade minister named Mark Harris, but credible allegations of fraud designed to help Harris prompted this election. And even on top of fraud, the district is still moving in that direction. The Daily Cause, Democrats on the average run 11 points ahead of Hillary Clinton's margin that was in 2016. This may help provide the context for the political environment in which 9 is being contested. That's North Carolina 9. In this race was happening during the 2018 cycle. It may really have been a toss-up. Basically, it was on election night, but now it happens in 2020 cycle when the parties may be a bit closer in terms of off-year motivation. It may also be the district is a bit too Republican for the race to feel like a toss-up. special election unpredictable, and still 9 could close. McCready has a substantial money edge over Bishop. Nobody's investing in Bishop. No reason to. The Democrats hold the House. But they moved it to a lean Republican. I wonder about that one. We'll see. We want to make a note of other House races changing that we announced. Changes we announced there. They have moved Olson, that's a Texas 22, to a toss-up, and J.D. Cox likely to lean Democrat, California. And open seat Brooks, where is Brooks? Indiana 5, safe to lean Republican. The then most recent, we moved 22 lean Republican to toss-up. This is this Pete Olson, a Republican. They're going to have to include now Mr. Hurd. The ship continues in 212 as Ted Cruz only carried the district by less than a point over Beto O'Rourke, according to next election analyst J. Miles Coleman. Olson only won by 5 points against Cher Preston, whatever here, who is running again. It may be that race. Anyway, a couple of weeks ago we moved T.J. Cox from like a Democrat to lean Democrat after ex-representative Valadeo took steps towards a rematch. It's our district. Hillary Clinton won the district, majority Latino district, by 16 points, but Valadeo won easily in the 212, 214, 216 before losing to Cox. And a number of other Republicans, of course, have announced they will not reappear. Martha Roby in Alabama 2, Paul Mitchell in Michigan 10, and Mike Conaway in Texas 11, Rob Bishop in Utah 1. None of these seats are competitive in the general election. All of me, no one except the members themselves know exactly why they retired. Well, anyway, they've gone. Now, runoff in Mississippi. Primary for Mississippi governor, that'll be next Tuesday, even though Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves has long been favored. He may have to face a runoff. A Mason-Dixon poll shows Reeves with 41%, followed by the former Supreme Court Justice Bill Wailers Jr. at 31, and Representative Foster at 13. Foster has made national news thanks to refusal to allow a female reporter to follow him on the campaign trail without a male companion. Strange bird. The real story is that Wallace appears to be pushing Reeves. The runoff would be on the 27th. State Attorney General Jim Hood, a social conservative with an impressive electoral record, is a likely Democratic nominee. And Republicans are gunning for their fifth straight gubernatorial victory in a racially polarized Mississippi. No doubt is typically outvoted. Larger Republican European bloc, while Hood is the strongest possible Democratic candidate. This is still a Republican's race to lose. We rate this race leans Republican as the same rating we gave to Kentucky's governor race, where the unpopular Matt Blevin faces a very credible challenge from Andy Beshear, his son and former governor Beshear there. The other gubernatorial race this year is in Louisiana's John Bell Edwards seeks a second term. That race features an all-party primary, that's called the jungle primary. Who gets 50 plus 1 wins the race. There will be a runoff on this 16th, November 16th. Edwards, the two leading challengers are Ralph Abraham, Louisiana 5, and a businessman and political donor, Rapport. Abraham is favored to face Edwards in the runoff. So that's what we have from the people of there. And let me just look a little bit at Mark McCready. Not sure if we have this up. This is from the Charlotte Observer, and we didn't find it. Okay, let's wander around here a little more and see what we can dig up. We're not digging much. Sometimes what we do, we put things around. We do have some polling here. This is from the Reuters ISOP data. This is of 1,115 Americans. This is and 972 registered voters. 471 registered Democrats, 384 Republicans, 92 were independents. And these are various things that they looked at here. Right direction, wrong direction. The wrong track, excuse me. Wrong track is at 58. All registered, this is all adults, all registered voters at 59. Wrong track's always at registered Democrats at 87. Registered Republicans at 25. Registered Independents at 55. Most important problems facing the country. For adults, 17%. Health care, all registered voters, 18%. Democrats, 24%. Republicans, only 9%. Independent voters at 23%. This is health care. Energy, very, very low, only 1%. Mortality, 7%. And for Democrats, it's 6%. Education, only 4%. That's sad. Crime, very low. Registered voters, 6%. 8% for the Democrats, 4% for the Republicans. Well, they got a lot of crime going on. The environment, overall, adults are 7%. Registered voters, 8%. 12% for Republicans, 3% Republicans, yeah. Trump's approval rating, we'll look at this. Strong approval, all adults 20%, registered voters 22%, Democrats 2%, Republicans 50%, Independents at 14%, somewhat approved. 16% of all adults, 17% of registered voters, 28% of Republicans and of Independents, and 30% of Republicans, 5% of Democrats. So the total here is all adults 39% for DJ Trump. That's the approval rating. Registered voters with 40%. Democrats at 7%. Republicans at 83%. You can see what's going on here. And Independents at 41%. Total disapproval rating for all adults 57%. Registered voters 58%. Democrats 92% disapprove of him. Republicans only 62%, and Independents 51%. And it showed a little bit of his weekly here. He had a high of 57. Unbelievable. In your opinion, what political party has a better planned policy approach to each of the following? Healthcare, Democrats have 40%, Republicans 23%. Independents say 6% of independents here. The war on terror, Democrats 25%, 34% for the Republicans. The U.S. economy, Democrats at 29%, that is strange, and 37% for the Republican Party, 6% for independents. Immigration, almost tied up, 34% and for the Democrats and 35% for the Republicans. Social Security, Democrats there at 36% and Republicans at 22%, Independents at 6%. Medicare, 40% for the Democrats, only 20% for the Republicans. Taxes, pretty much tied up here, 32% for the Democrats, 31% for the Republicans. Gay marriage, 42% for the Democrats, percent of the people, and only 12% for the Republicans. Jobs and employment, 30% for the Democrats and 36% for the Republicans. Supporting a small business, almost the same. That usually the Republicans win that handover. It's 29% for the Democrats, 31% for the Republicans. Education, way ahead. Democrats 38%, Republicans 21%. Foreign policy, this is interesting here. 31% for Democrats, 33% for the Republicans. Women's rights, it's a runaway thing there. 45% for the Democrats, 19% for the Republicans. The environment, 44% for the Democrats, only 12% there. On the Israeli foreign policy, 10% difference there, 22% for the Democrats, 32% for the Republicans. On Syria, 21% for the Democrats, 25% for Republicans. Energy policy, Democrats at 37% and Republicans. Party ID, strong Democrats 18%, moderate Democrats 19%, lean Democrats at 7%, lean Republicans at 10%, moderate Republicans at 14%, strong Republicans at 13%, independents at 12%. Party ID, 37% were in the survey were Democrats, 27% Republicans. I mean, we talked about that. And Alina's, 43% of those were Democrats and 36% Republicans and 12% there. So the credibility level, we're looking at that. Nice equation here. Bayesian credibility levels at 1 plus L equals 1.3. Anyway. So, this is the Reuters poll here. So we have something. I guess we'll look at the time here. We're about out of time. But anyway, in these times, and this was part of the roundup from Real Clear Politics. Corporate Democrats have been in the driver's seat for 30 years. Not anymore in the debates. Bernie and Elizabeth Warren obliterated the corporate Democratic parts of the party for more than 30 years. But on Tuesday night, there's any indication Democrats may finally be moving the home stretch from a long, painful recovery. And they mentioned Bernie Sanders here. Warren, we are not going to solve the urgent problems we face as small ideas and spinelessness. Bernie argued, claiming, I get a bit tired of Democrats being afraid of big ideas. Ever since Clinton in the 90s, the party's officials have had internalized the belief that being too bold or too far to the left, political obliviation, enjoying a near unbreakable hold on the White House from 32 to 68, following 24 years, saw Democratic nominees go down in landslides. They have the peace candidate George McGovern, who would have pulled the troops out of Vietnam, was defeated. Within 90 days, they were out. Walter Mondale and Michael Dukakis, respecting conveniently ignoring reality, that both had campaigned as centrist, pledging to cut the deficit and reform welfare. That was a curtain call. The Democrats' choice of safe moderate candidates, John Kerry, was vulnerable to G.W. Bush. Barack Obama finished the Clinton job, had begun with his fear of appearing too radical, heaven forbid a socialist. Well, he was in a different situation altogether. Paralyzed by caution and his worst instincts through a gradual takeover by the corporate interests. That is much more so. Corporate Democrats scared off the mythical Reagan Democrats. The result had been the party failed to inspire its core constituency. Just look at the Obama years, during which the party lost over 1,000 seats. They did indeed. Debate saw Republicans' onslaught on the idea of the parties surging a left wing, Warren and the company. Both tributes for progressives. And Delaney here, Hickenlooper Willie talked with those characters. Jake Tapper demanded to know if Warren and Sanders' plans on raising taxes for the middle class. The senators responded combatively, battling away the attacks in an often a flurry of fashion. I don't understand why anyone goes to all the trouble running for president of the United States just to talk about what we really can't do and can't fight for. Right about that. And Delaney tried to get Medicare for all his political suicide. Big Pharma plays in the pharmaceutical lobbying was one of the major pharmaceutical industries to air commercials during the break. So in other words, they were already out there level acquisition at Tapper. So in other words, you can see, but Tapper was no more than just a lackey. At one point, the moderate pushed the candidates to affirm they'd maintain the U.S. First use of nuclear stance. Warren Baber rejected it, paralleling Jeremy Corbyn's own stance on the matter. Yeah, perhaps the most significant between Sanders and Warren. Policies like Medicare for all, a wealth tax, etc. Sanders argued to win the election and to defeat Trump, we need to have a campaign of energy, excitement, and vision. No doubt about that. Meanwhile, Warren and Sanders criticized their conservative challenges were rooted more in a kernel of truth. Sanders charged that Delaney, while opposing a Medicare for all, made money off of Medicare was wrong, besides being a conservative New Democrat, while in the House supported the Trans-Pacific pipeline. As Sledge has reported, his latest filed in 2019 shows Delaney had $3.2 million invested in the healthcare sector and a withholding company. So he's a millionaire. Didn't know that. So that's so much for Delaney. And Bennett opposed Amendment 69. That was a ballot initiative that would have installed a single-payer system in Colorado. And then Hickenlooper claimed that it's premature to reform the behind closed doors. He told the Colorado Forum, an assembly of business and political operatives comprised of one of the most powerful lobbies, that a couple of large healthcare-related companies are looking at moving their headquarters to Colorado. Bet they are. In most polls, both candidates are ranking somewhere between 0 and 1. Hickenlooper's campaign has been hemorrhaging staff since July, recently celebrated triumphantly when he hit a mere 2%. So be it, as they say. And let me finish this up here. Branko Marcetic is a staff writer. Oh, he's with the magazine here. Jakin. Anyway, this is interesting. They finally put that. Hails from, he's from Anchor, a New Zealander, masters in American political history. Anyway, this is from Indies Times. Hadn't heard from them in some time, if you pardon the pun, but they're still out there. We try to mix it up here as much as we can. Anyway, this will come to an end. This is Friday Java on the 2nd day of August, 2019. Boston Red in the Jared Pippin broadcast booth here. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll see you on the week that was on many of these same channels: iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, and other outlets in between. Good day.